I'm going to protect you. I'm going to shut down access to everything. Right. I said, it's almost like the same response that someone on a battlefield laying in, fetal position in a little
I
hole
got you.
while bombs are going off around them. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what you're hearing. I said, so the amount of trauma, the amount of revved up hyperarousal for one, right? So hyperarousal is typical in like PTSD. I sort of explained like a panic attack is like slamming your foot on the gas pedal of the limbic, like the sympathetic nervous system, right? It's just boom, you hit the gas, the RPMs go up to 10, you feel like you're going to blow your motor, and then they come back down. I said hyperarousal was like resting a heavy foot on the gas pedal. It ramps up to about 4 or 5, and it just idles there.
Stays there full time. Yeah.
In some ways, it's more damaging because it never comes down. It just stays there. Sometimes
we use it's the same analogy. We use the gas all the time. We usually refer to the gas pedals glutamate. Just trying to simplify things. I know there's other factors that play, but glutamate's the gas pedal, and GABA's the brakes. And the problem, I try to simplify and just say, look, what happened is our brakes aren't functioning well. We have a bad brake line, and so we can't. So the glutamate can kick in, and it can keep kicking in, or whatever's triggering you, but you don't have the come down. You don't have the ability to slow down, to reset yourself like we do normal functioning. So that gas keeps elevating because we're not bringing it back down. Our brakes are broken, and it's a simple analogy. There's far more science to it than that, as you know, but it's an analogy that seems to work with a lot of people.
Sure.
You can grasp, which is, it's that whole, so I agree. I think the car analogy is great because we keep getting revved up and we're constantly revving ourselves, but we can't slow ourselves down as effectively. I'm not saying we can't, but as effectively, So, and like you said, I never want to say that saying that there's nothing you can do. You bring up a really good point. Yeah, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot we can work on to get better. And I never try to emphasize that there's nothing you can do. You can work on anxiety tools. You work on meditation. Like you talked about, you can do these things. So yeah.
Right. And the thing about hyperarousal is it's not unique to benzo people, right? No. People with trauma have had it. People who can't insomnia, people who have insomnia experience it. People just with certain anxiety and hypersensitivities experience it. So it's not entirely the bigger picture is not entirely GABA and glutamate. It's cortisol. It's adrenaline.
There's so many factors. There's a lot of factors. Yeah, there's a lot of factors that come into play. You betcha.
So think about it from the limbic system. What hyperarousal is keeping that foot on the pedal, keeping the car warm, so we can get the hell out of here when whatever danger is coming, right? So that's part of that, right? And you're right. Now the GABA, if we had better GABA, we would be able to access that parasympathetic and lull that back down quicker instead of it just staying sort of revved up on its own. But this is where, like, the psychology comes in, because your rumination keeps it revved up, right? So how am I supposed to heal?
Absolutely.
If I'm sitting here going, I'm still in danger, I'm still in danger, I'm still in danger, and the limbic system's hearing that, and it's already got me in hyperarousal mode, it's not going to come down. So it's not
we
just
become our own worst enemies. Yeah, we're doing it to ourselves.
And you develop an anxiety disorder, right? Because the brain chemistry follows, the physiology follows that kind of mechanism, and vice versa, same way. I tell people you could take a quote unquote perfectly healthy person, if you belittle them enough, you beat them down, make them feel bad about themselves, and you can make people sick. You can literally make someone sick. You know what I mean? And you can make them better.
There's so many factors at play, and I agree with you. I agree with you. I totally believe there is a neurological function. There's neurological adaptation that has taken place from these drugs that can carry on for years. But there are a lot of other factors too. And that's what you're saying about it. It's like, there could be PTSD that's playing in here. There's other anxiety, ruminations, like you're talking about, all these other factors. And it's creating, habits in your brain. It's creating patterns in your brain during this difficult time. Pathways, and while there is still this neurological damage that may be taking months or years to heal, there's also this other layer of all the effects of that's building on itself. So
it's more maniacal than we thought. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's so maniacal at that point. So take this example, and I could give you literally 100 people I've worked with at this point where 5, 6, 3, whatever years later, they're agoraphobic. And I said, let's just start with that. I'm not saying, I don't want to gaslight anyone. I'm not saying this isn't in fact, I am saying it's benzo damage related. I'm 100% saying that. But what I'm saying is now the receptors, the initial cause of that might be more or less more healed than you think. We never know how much, 5%, 100%, who knows? I said, but let's just try this experiment. Let's work on the agoraphobia. And I'm telling you, man, within 2 to 3 months, I've seen people go from states that are unbelievable to they're starting to drive again. They're taking their kids to the soccer game. And they come back to me and they cry and they say, Dave, I I was living in a bubble for the last 5 years thinking that I just was damaged and there was no repairing this thing. I did not know this could be, and they were frustrated and they said, are you telling me this was all agoraphobia? I said, no, I'm telling you, this came from the benzo, right?
You're teaching anxiety management tools. You're teaching them. Yeah. And I focus on that all the time. It's like the one thing we really can control is how we manage our anxiety to some degree. And, yes, our brains are probably not functioning at 100% during this time. And that makes it even harder for us to manage that anxiety. And I know it's incredibly difficult for so many people, but you can take the small steps you're talking about. You can take those small steps to try to make, and if you can reduce, even chip away 5% of that anxiety state, you're going to start to see a change. You're going to start to see some improvement. And
and I think more importantly, you can bring down the risk of the manifestation, from that anxiety, progressing to the point of agoraphobia. Right. That's why not a lot of us do that. I have people that are really bad in
before that habit and that pattern is created into the absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Or later, 6 years later, for example, and now you don't realize that that's still treatable. Let's treat that. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Doesn't mean that you still don't have a hypersensitized nervous system and that, that benzo bind or protracted might not still be playing it, or that, like I said, I think a lot of us are left with a hypersensitized nervous system. But man, the brain is plastic. It can change. We can change it. We now know we can grow new neurons, right? Remember years they told us that was impossible. They said you only had a certain number of neurons.
And now they know that that's not the case. Yeah.
Right. Remember they told us you only don't drink a beer. Every time you drink a beer, you're killing thousands of neurons and you don't get them back. Well, it's not true.
Yeah. One of the concepts I talk a lot is I think so many of us are focused on this damage. It's a terrible word. It's like, oh, my body's been, and I was there. I was sucked into it. I was like, oh my God, these pills have destroyed my body and my life, and you're focused on that. That's where you're trapped. And I try to reverse that. And so now what I try to focus on most of the people I work with is think of it this way. As you're tapering or have come off the drugs, those drugs are no longer damaging you. Or even if you're tapering, you're still reducing that damage. Okay. If that's the concept you're stuck with. So now your body is healing. And one of the concepts I try to work with them is that all these symptoms, every symptom you're having is a sign you're healing. And I have them focus on that. This is a sign. So I get the tinnitus. Oh, there's a tinnitus in my ear that drives me. Oh, wait a minute. That means that's just a sign that my body's still healing. Right. And I don't know, it's a concept that's worked for a lot of people I've worked with because it helps me. Mm-hmm. It's like, these symptoms, because it's that rumination you're talking about. I can get obsessed about the tinnitus that I have right now in my right ear. This pulsatile tinnitus kicking in, and I can obsess on that. And I could get bummed that I'm having a flare-up, and I agree, it's not a setback, it's a flare-up. I can be bummed that I still have this 8 years out. I can be bummed, or I can say, oh, there's that tinnitus again. Yeah, well, it'll probably fade over time. Let's move on. That's the difference. It's this level of acceptance. It's this level of, healing and that mental state. And it helps to calm some of that anxiety you're talking about.
Right. The anxiety, the narrative creates the loop. Like they often say, it's not what happened to you, but your interpretation of what happened to you that creates the trauma.
Exactly.
Such a big point. So take the tinnitus, right? I had tinnitus from playing metal music since I was 16.
Well, and part of mine's probably from being a drummer. Yeah, you betcha. Yeah.
and then I got fixated on it coming off benzos because it was like a constant like ringing, and I'm going, man, this is like brain damage. Yeah. That's how I framed it. I'm experiencing brain damage. Oh my God, this means insert.
And there's that rumination. You betcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would talk to other musicians. And they never went through benzos, obviously, but they would go, "Oh man, I got ringing in this ear." 80%.
There's other causes.
And you know what I noticed? That they treated it like wrestlers who had the cauliflower ear, right?
Oh, really?
You ever see cauliflower ear on the wrestlers? Yep. It's like a badge of like, look at me. I've been wrestling. So these musicians would go, "Oh man, I got 80% damage," and I'm like, "You're crazy. How you're not." ruminating over that. They did.
Well, it's like a scar, you got on your skin or something that you're proud of. It's like, oh yeah, that was that time that I, rescued the 14 nuns, from the kids crossing the street and saved the, it's like, yeah, but that's that scar. It's a wound. It doesn't look good, but that's that scar, and you're proud of it. And it's like, yeah, and it's a whole perception, right?
It really is, man. It is so much perception, and that's what I hammer on with this thing is like how you see it is a big deal. If you see yourself as a victim that's broken, that can't be repaired, that's going to, then it's going to be damaging, And I think you had a good point about looking at, I've said the same thing about the symptoms is like, remember, symptoms means you're healing. It's uncomfortable and it's hard to wrap your head around it,
but it is your body healing. Yeah. Cause your neurological system is now kind of testing things, and it's trying different things, and some new nerve endings that weren't working before are now working, but that's causing pain. Or that's causing muscle tightness, or it's causing some twitching or something. Well, that's your nerves testing themselves out and saying, hey, I can start to signal again. I can start to do things again. And it's like, it's just that process is so...
It's scary. It's scary.
It's frightening. And that's the thing is, I think my approach is always twofold. One is I start with compassion, because so many people, that come to us, haven't found anybody to say, my first goal is to say, what you're going through is real. This really happened to you. It very likely was caused by the medication. There may be other factors, but the medication probably was a factor for what you're going through. This is real, because this is what they don't get from the doctors most of the time. So I just want to give them that validation now.
100%.
Okay, so now your body might need to heal. Yeah, you might want to work with some tapering processes. I can't advise you on that because I'm not a medical professional, but there's some people that can, and we're going to help you kind of work through that. But like you said, there are some things you can do to make this process go better.
100%. Yeah, I really believe that. And I think it's critical after benzos. I mean, like I said, when you're going through benzo, I don't lie or pretend to like over sell my program or something. I say, look, I promise you 5 to 15%.
Yeah.
I can promise you 5 to 15. I feel really confident about that number. That doesn't mean that I haven't had people that it worked 85% on. I went, wow. But I'm not selling that. I say 5 or 15%. If we do these things, we can help just on breaking the rumination alone. Yeah. We can bring down certain levels of suffering, because rumination activates, again, the hyperarousal. Hyperarousal increases benzo symptoms. So there's a simple kind of math here. I said, but more so, we can sort of help mitigate the manifestations of worse things. And I think that is most important. So that way we can hold strong, get through this. But I think on the other side of it, post benzos, that's when it's so damn important. And I mean, years later, to this day, I still do the things that I preach. I still get up at a certain time. I get a glass of water. I go right out to sunlight. I check my circadian rhythms. I take vitamin D. I get the vitamin D. The exercise, the exposure, everything I do, positive affirmations, meditation, like it's all still there, because
I wish I could agree with you. I didn't. And I paid some price for it. I did not stick with all my things as I started to feel better. And I let myself go. So no, my diet didn't do well, and my meditation faded because I got busy. I just got busy.
What happens? And then, I did too at a point.
And like I mentioned, that whole thing with my folks, it's like I'm driving back and forth to Kansas City. I'm taking care of them. I was not taking care of myself. Right. And that's another factor that led into this flare-up that I went through. Right. Because I wasn't taking care of my health either. I let myself go some, and I'll admit that. So now I'm in the process of getting back to my exercise. I've been eating right. I'm doing all these things, trying to get my health back on track. I paid the price for letting my habits to some degree fade. I still kept some good ones, but some of them I didn't maintain them, and that's what happens.
I hear you. Yeah. And I did go through phases like that too. You get, look, we're creatures of the path of least resistance. When you get really busy and you just focus on whatever that thing is, and you do start. And so now I listen to my body a lot. And sometimes I want to help more people. And I go, you know what? I got to take a day off. I have to take an extra day off, or I have to go fishing, or I need to just unplug and lay on the couch and watch comedies for a day, because I have to bring my own hyperarousal back down. Yeah. And I have to balance all of that. So exercise, I don't jog or anything, but I walk really fast.
Actually, I walk primarily. I mean, my wife and I do 2 walks a day regardless.
Good. That's what I do.
And our dog got us in that habit. And now we're without a dog right now, but we're getting a new one, hopefully. But we still stayed with our walks. And I'm really proud that we do that every day without fail. It's a huge thing. And also it's the nature, nature is such a huge, positive effect. And so if you can get exercise and be in nature, well, man, you just doubled up your benefit.
100%. And both have a neuroplasticity effect. And
you betcha.
And neuroplasticity especially affects that limbic system. So I tell everyone, look, if you believe in plasticity and you're going through this, it's perfect, because most of the studies that show like a growth in like the hippocampus, that amygdala region of the brain, like this is that fight or flight. This is seat of the fight or flight center, the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. Like this is really important, and this is where we're seeing the most neuroplasticity. So it's the most promising for people like us, coming through a hypersensitized nervous system. So I think it's a must, and I mean, to this day, if I don't get enough sunlight, if I'm not as active, like when I got COVID and I developed long COVID and I had breathing issues and insomnia, and I got out of the gym for months, man, I could feel my stress levels rising exponentially. I started getting depressed.
You mentioned about the air hunger, and that's, I have to admit, my swallowing issues, that's probably a factor. As I tend to think about it, the breathing and my breathing rhythm when I'm eating and stuff like that is a factor, and air hunger plays into that. And I had that early on, and it's back a little bit, hey, it happens. But I also realize it probably won't be here too long. Most of the stuff, my throat's gotten a little better. My swallowing's gotten a little better. I'm still getting things checked out, but I'm getting a little better. And that's how benzo symptoms work. And they will keep fading. I have a strong feeling. And also I'm further away from the long COVID. And the long COVID, I think, was a significant factor. And I think I'm healing from that too. So I've been getting better.
These days I've been working a lot on this idea of remove benzo from benzo recovery, and I started working with this brilliant doctor who named Coach Daniel Erickson. I did a podcast with him on insomnia. Really changed the game for me with this guy. And his whole thing was, sort of he talks a lot about hyperarousal and how rumination, and we had such a similar philosophy, but he kept trying to take the insomnia out of the sleep problem. He tried to normalize things.
Interesting.
And brings down, he said, like, look, sleep is, it is what it is, but let's try to not ruminate and obsess about it so much.
Go.
And he even wrote a book called Set It and Forget It, and it was beautiful. Here's your alarm, set the alarm, forget it.
That's kind of what I do with my insomnia. I read several books, and some of the books I read had that type of guidance, not exactly that, but that, and so it's like, look, if you can't sleep, then just move on and do something. Or do something different, or let it be, and then go back and try. But the more you worry about not sleeping, the less you're gonna sleep.
Absolutely, that's why a lot of that sleep hygiene turns against you, because
if you do too much and it becomes excessive, it can become a problem.
It becomes a problem the moment you're using it to sleep. You know what I mean? Like I say, I love having a tea in the evening. I love meditation and taking a hot bath, but if you're doing it with the pressure of this, gotta let me sleep,
then now your brain's in that stage, and now you're thinking, well, if it doesn't work,
start to panic, right? So I said, think about your limbic system as being sort of like this obedient dog who's always barking at everything. He's looking out for you. And I said, you're sitting on the couch watching TV, and then he's sitting there. He's your little buddy. And then you get up and you look out the window and you sit back down, and he's looking at you like, what are you doing that for?
I know.
A couple minutes later, you look out the door. You lock the door. You go check the back door. You look out the back window. I said, after enough times, this dog is going to start to get up and start investigating things. And it doesn't matter how much you say, no, it's fine. Well, why are you doing all this? No, I'm just doing it to sleep. Why? Is there some problem?
Why? Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so then the hyperarousal system starts to come up. And once that comes up, once that cortisol, which is designed to not let you sleep, right? It's designed to get you moving away from a grizzly bear. You're off to the races now, buddy. Now you got to bring that down.
I still sometimes recommend and still do some sleep hygiene, but I totally agree. It can't become the obsession, and you can't become focused on it. Actually, my thing is I often go to bed now, and I'm sleeping a lot better, but I often go to bed and say, hey, I may not sleep tonight. So,
That's right.
I'm gonna maybe watch a movie, my iPad. I'll get up and read. I'll go down and see the stairs, and I'll start working. I mean, I'll even go use the treadmill because I can do it in the basement. My wife has woken up, and I get some exercise. And a lot of times my akathisia kicks in, not so much anymore, but I still get it occasionally. I mean, it was much stronger before. And I'll come downstairs. I'll do stairs. I'll go up and down my basement stairs about 10 times, and I go back to bed. And sometimes I sleep and sometimes I don't. But worrying about not sleeping does me zero good.
It works against you.
It works against you. Exactly. So
the more you make peace with it and you let it go, what I realize is the sleep drive is like a train, and it's coming every 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, as quick as that. I mean, I've been sitting there and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, oh man, and there's a voice in the back of my head going, Dave, it's not good. And I go, just shut up. Just
hang on there.
But you really have to make peace. That's the thing about this. And this is why I say, like, taking the benzo out of benzo, make peace with it. Accept it.
Exactly.
It's where that ACT philosophy.
Acceptance is so much. Well, and that's the thing I tied in. God, a couple of years ago, I started to see, and honestly, when my folks kind of going through the grief and stuff, but I was starting to see before that the grief process. You talk about PTSD, the grief process of benzo dependence. Right. Because I see more and more people as I apply that, and from the psychological perspective, as I apply that to the process, I see them going through that stage. And that's why acceptance is so key. It's that, the anger initially, it's the denial, it's all these stages we hit, the depression, because it's such a major, any major life change often sends you into those 5 stages of grief, and that acceptance is so huge, because finally you may not like it, but you've accepted this is, this is where I'm at. And so let me make the most of it. Let me try to figure out how to get through it the best I can. And once people hit that stage, I tell you, for me, it's miraculous how much they improve.
It really is.
Because they're not fighting against it anymore. They're now just living with it.
And bringing the sort of the psychological component back into it, I frame it again under that limbic system, right? The same thing with sleep. That's what hyperarousal is. Once you say to the hyperarousal system, look, we're safe. Are you sure? I'm not checking the windows anymore. I'm not locking the doors.
Nope.
Within 10 minutes, I'm asleep after one. You know what I mean? So 1 o'clock, I'm sitting there going, man, I am 100% wide awake. And I'm starting to get nervous, right? I'm starting to get nervous. And then I go, it's all right, man. It's okay. Like you said, if I sleep, it's fine. And I really feel that in my heart. Like, it's different. You can't BS your limbic system. It goes, no, you're not fooling me, buddy. But when you really do make peace with it and you say, I'm okay with this, 10 minutes later, I'm out, and I'm like, wow. I wake up the next day, I go, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought
you talked about going to the ER with your heart and stuff like that. And I never went to the ER, but I went to the doc several times. I had about 5 EKGs over about a 2.5 year period, because I was sure I was having that heart attack early on in the benzo system. But for me, it was like, my doctor, she was great. She was a nurse practitioner. She worked with me, and she said, okay, I want an EKG again. She goes, no problem. She knew what I was going through. We'd work through it, and I'd go in there and she'd send me through it. So, okay, so my heart's fine. My heart's fine. That gave me the foundation to go back home and say, okay, it's not my heart. And then guess what? In a couple of days, it eased. It would go away, but I needed to prove to myself sometimes. And sometimes I think it's okay to go get checked out, like I'm doing now, just to make sure there's not something else going on. But that also eases that anxiety. And part of the reason I'm going to doctors now is to take that level off, to say, okay, I've eliminated other serious things. 100%. So it's probably COVID, it's probably benzos, it's probably these factors all combined in, and that's probably what I'm going through.
100%.
And then guess what? It starts to get better, because that worry now has been pulled away from it, and you're starting to adapt.
I agree. I tell people with health anxiety, go get it all tested.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it, but don't be obsessive about it. Don't keep getting it tested. Like my 5 EKGs were over like a 3-year period. It wasn't one after the other, but I had costochondritis during mine, with the whole tight muscles. I started to pull my muscles in my rib cage. Well, that's pain right down the middle of your chest. And so that was fun, just like you. It's like, so I wanted to run to the ER, but I knew enough that it probably wasn't it. So I'd go see the doctor the next day, and she'd run an EKG on me just to make sure my heart's fine. And you know.
Or I would get, you have terrible stomach problems and digestion problems, and I would eat, and then I would get like a bubble up here. And of course that feels a lot like something else, and I'd be like, oh my God, did my heart just skip a beat? I'm like, I think it's indigestion, it's hard to tell.
Chest pain was always either costochondritis or esophageal reflux. It was always one of the two. It's like, So,
by the way, this light over here went off. I'm not trying to look like I'm mysterious or
oh wow. I noticed mine is like really, my background has got really white on this camera, so it's like it's darker in here, but for some reason the exposure is really sensitive, so it makes it look like it's bright in my basement. But it's kind of dark down here.
You're like cheerful, and I look like I'm on the set of Game of Thrones or something over here.
You have that whole mood thing going. Actually, it's kind of peaceful. It's like relaxed. You look more laid back than I do. I'm kind of like on this hyper arousal point right now.
Yeah, but I just want to make a point. I don't want people to go, what the hell is Coach Powers doing? He thinks he's in a movie.
Just to let you know, I either need to wrap or I need to hit a bathroom break.
Yeah, that's fine. We can wrap up here in a minute.
Yeah, I don't mind either way. It's just
I get it.
Welcome to my, I've been on here for a while, so my urinary dysfunction kicks in, and I have to make the bathroom run.
How bad is it? Do you got a few more minutes, or do you want to just take a quick?
I got a few more minutes. Okay. I can wrap things, or if you want to continue, I can run up and come back, and either way is fine with me.
I'll tell you what. I'd love to talk to you for about another 20 minutes. You got that?
Well, let's pause for a second.
Okay.
Okay, give me.
Great. I appreciate you hanging out a little bit more.
My dad used to tell me, I used to think back to the things my dad told me, and my dad used to tell me, he said, there's 3 great joys in life: eating, peeing, and sex. And he said, as you age, peeing becomes the greatest joy of all. And it's like, I start to get that in the late 50s now. It's like, boy, when you have to go and you can just
your late 50s,
yourself, man, you feel good. Yeah, I'm 57.
Oh my God, I thought you were in your 30s, man. You look young.
No. How old are you?
41 now.
Oh, I got you by a little bit then. Yeah, no, I'm 57. Wow. Been around for a little while, yeah.
Hey, great shape, man.
No, thanks.
Good for you. You must be doing something right.
If you look close enough, this beard's got a lot of white in it. So it's like,
okay. Yeah. Well, I can't get over you. You look so much like my old bassist, man.
That's funny.
I tell you dress like him, you talk like him, same glasses, same hat. He lived in Colorado.
Oh,
right. He moved to Colorado.
Maybe I am him, a different incarnation.
Weird.
I don't know. It is weird stuff.
Waiting for you to rip the mask off and tell me, like, oh man, this is where you went.
Yeah, that'll be the great climax of the show. It's like,
I got a bone to pick with you, man. You ruined the band when you left.
I'm sorry. I actually did that maybe to somebody's one time. So
oh God,
I know.
I used to want to. I thought that was the dream. Was to be be a musician. Yeah. I still play. Speaking of which, yeah. Okay. I was writing an album, and then what happened was everybody just gets married and has kids and moves away, and then the music scene changed. It just but
it's a lot different now. Yeah, I wouldn't recognize it. I've been out of it for so long that I don't. I just do my own thing. I got a Roland kit back there. I play that most of the time because it's electronic and I don't have to bother my wife. But then I got a Tama set next to it that I play now and then. So
yeah, the music was huge for me getting better. And I mean, I remember being so depressed and so just apathetic about everything that when I started playing guitar, I knew it would be therapeutic. And I had read the studies, and I just knew creatively. I could not get into it. I mean, I sucked. I couldn't be creative. Everything just didn't sound good. And that's what I mean by, going back to some of this Benzo stuff, like you really have to dig and push in the right direction long enough. And even with like any of the work, anything you're doing, exercise, agoraphobia, any of it, it's like, do not expect a rapid turnaround. It's almost like brushing your teeth. You're doing it for a good reason, and you just keep doing it, or dieting or walking on the treadmill.
Mine during that time was more exercise than anything. I don't know that I was being very creative, because I was usually just put the headset on and played out to some classic rock or jazz or something. So it's more the exercise I would have, or I'd pull out, like I got back there, I got a djembe up on the top, and I got a set of bongos on the bookshelf back there. So I got there you go. I got some bongos back there and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I'll pull those down and I'll just, play for a while. And there's some therapy to it now. But back then, it was more just, I would get on the set and I just burn off the calories and I burn off my akasesia, because I just needed that relief, to do things.
100%. So. Me too. And it was also helping me with my heart anxieties.
Oh God.
I was worried about getting my heart rate up, and you would just be beating and going off, So that part was good. I mean, the creative part, I think I was trying to play music initially to be creative again, and that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And playing guitar wasn't as liberating and exercise inducing as playing the drums. So I did play the drums, and I had a great time.
Oh, cool.
But the guitar, when I went back, that was my main instrument. That was that wasn't really good for me initially. But then what happened was one day I just kept doing it because it's like it's good to do. Just keep doing it, Dave. And then what happened was eventually I just broke down one day. It was almost like your heart and everything was just covered in gray, like you were becoming stone. And this little bit of like a note had just penetrated that stone and like let a little color in, just a little dab of color got in there, a little bit of light.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started playing more and more. And then I went and I bought this like a Gibson Les Paul. And I bought this 65 twin reverb Fender amp. You know, it was like, oh, this is the amp that the Beatles recorded the White Album on. And I bought the guitar that John Lennon played, you know, and I was like, oh man. And I didn't have the money. I mean, I took everything I had to do that. And I only did it because I thought I'll feel so guilty for buying this that it'll force me to play. You know what I mean? It'll force me to play because
I get the logic. Yeah.
So, and it did.
Well, and I'm kind of that way because I've actually just started to take up guitar a little bit. My dad had a guitar.
Okay.
And his passing was a year ago, February, whatever. And so one of the things I brought home with me. And so I got it restrung. My next door neighbor actually is a guitar aficionado. And he's got, you know, the humidor in the basement, all of kept at a certain temperature. He's got his whole collection up on the wall and everything. It's pretty good.
Oh, that's cool.
And so he's helped me restring it. He's kind of helped me get up to speed on it, you know, and I mean, just enough so I could start playing some basic chords, but very, very novice. But yeah, the creativity, there's something, you know, I never really was good at a melodic instrument. I was always the drums, you know, and I played some marimba and xylophone here and there, but I wasn't a keys expert. I wasn't a mallet expert. I was, you know, I did that in percussion, but mostly I was, you know, rhythm set. You know, snare was actually my expertise. I was mostly a snare drummer most of my life, and that's where I excelled. But it's like the rest of the stuff, you know, but I like the melodic part. I wanted to do something that had some more creativity to it than just playing the drums, you know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you know, and the thing about like playing the guitar is I was playing songs. I was learning a bunch of covers that were songs that I loved that meant something, you know, like I was playing like Wild Horses from the Stones. A lot of Tom Petty, you know, a lot of Tom Petty songs. I was playing sad stuff and I was playing it obsessively, but it was good for me. It wasn't making me depressed. It was helping me feel again, you know.
Good.
So it was very cathartic in that regard. I think it's I was playing a dangerous game maybe a little bit with that, but there was no way I was going to play like Bob Marley, you know, like there's no way I would have been faking the hell out of that to be like, happy, sure. But I just wanted to feel something other than stress and pain and fear. And so it was like there was a tidal wave of emotion sitting behind this brick wall that I needed to just let flow out. I just needed to cry.
I see what you mean, because it's like, I was just thinking that related to one of my things is I also did some musical theory for a long time as percussion. So I was in a lot of pits and I played that throughout part of the time too. But one of the ones I started to play and really worked out things was Jesus Christ Superstar. And that's a great drum, just the whole thing is. And so I'll do the album from cover to cover. But it's just it's such an emotional roller coaster, that whole thing is. So it also catches me on that side. And it was just very cathartic. And that's still one of the ones I'll go to and I'll just play the whole album. And it's just like, because it just really kind of pulls out some of, you know, some of the demons, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know.
It really does. Yeah, I use that a lot. And another thing that I did that was very, I think hugely therapeutic, and I work with it with my clients, is I've kind of called it like the 5 senses limbic retraining, just a type I've been working with. And one thing I did is I had this hot tub. I was lucky enough to have a hot tub because I had injured my back and I had some various injuries that I was nursing, and hot tub was amazing. It was like a hydro tub. I would get in that thing every night. We
used to have one. We loved ours. Yeah.
Oh man, it's like having a massage therapist at your dispense anytime. It's almost better. And I would get in there and I would say, okay, Dave, when you get in here, no more rumination. Like, you know, you have to turn it off.
I like
just
that.
For this moment. It was a meditation, you know. So what I started to do was I started to access my senses, because I was thinking, you know, a lot of CBT work with like rumination and trauma and all
almost a sensory deprivation kind of thing, or
it was almost, well, no, I would say deprivation. It was almost a reverse, but it was a channeling of the senses to focus on something positive. Because it's one thing to talk to your limbic system and say, you know, there's 2 approaches to bringing like the hyperarousal system down. Like you could go, hey, everything's okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Right.
And that's effective to a point. But the limbic system's not designed to respond to that. It's not how it was evolved, right?
Yeah.
Many animals don't talk. They don't respond like that. But the limbic system is always assessing the body and the environment, scanning. And if you just shut up and get out of the way, if you turn this off, it will do its thing. It will run this scan and say, just like sleep's the same thing. If you just get out of your way, it will scan the environment, say, I don't see any grizzly bears. I'm going to let them sleep. and I think a certain amount is true with the benzo symptoms thing. Like if we can get out of our way, because so much of it's rumination. I mean, I've had pulled people out of the most horrific states in 1 hour of just a good conversation. And I say, look, that's not what you thought it was it? Because
exactly,
there's no amount of conversation, I don't care how good it is, that if you're diabetic is going to turn around those insulin levels. There's no conversation that you can have that's going to change your blood pressure necessarily, in a real like heart problem level. But anyway, so the idea, I was toying with this idea. I was like, if I can get out of my way, be more mindful, I could focus on my senses. I could get out of the rumination. But more so, I said, if you could show the limbic system that we're safe by increasing pleasure in all the senses, that would confuse it, because it's never been, I said, no one's ever ran from a grizzly bear in a hot tub. Nobody's ever run from a grizzly bear while listening to their favorite music, while tasting one of their favorite, like a piece of chocolate, while smelling something that's very beautiful, while looking at a bouquet of flowers, right? You put all of those senses, all those sensations together.
Apologize for my cough. That's
sorry.
Tickle kicking in. Sorry about that. Yeah. Let me get some more water.
That's why I've been drinking too. My throat's like that. But I just kept focusing on that. So I would put this fragrance in the bath water, and I would have a little piece of like Dove chocolate, and I would put on some really pretty music, you know what I mean? And I sometimes I even had a bouquet of flowers if I could get it, or I'd pick flowers, or I'd put, I would sit out there in nature and I'd focus on like the trees and the skyline, and I would just try to be here, and I would just listen to the water, smell the fragrance, feel the water, look at the textures, hear the sounds, and I just kept going, cycling through my senses. And man, that was like my first moment where I had real relief. It was like the first time that I was having real relief, and it was really small at first. And I just kept doing that. And it was like, I said, sometimes it was like, there was a black film over my brain, and this was poking little trickles of light, holes with like a pin needle, and just little trickles of light. But I kept doing that, and it really I think it helped me on a lot of levels. I think it helped me with a little like neuroplasticity. I think it helped with the rumination. It made me feel safe. Like there's so many studies now coming out on just the power of the body. Like warm water takes us back to being like in the womb. It has this very primordial connection.
Well, now I got to go back and get a hot tub, man. Thanks.
I know, you really should.
I know we left ours with our house years ago, and so we haven't had one for a long time. Now I got to go out and get one.
I tell you, I've got clients that went, they even got on Amazon, and they would buy like, I think it's like a cheap $300, $400, $500, like cheap, but better than $4,000 or $5,000. No,
we were actually looking at it. We were at the home show this weekend, so we were actually looking at hot tubs and thinking about it. My wife and I have been talking to her for a couple of years because we both want to get one again.
You should,
because we used to have one. Yeah.
Now you can justify it. See, I need this. It'll help me recover.
See, exactly. I don't know. Can I write that off or something?
I think you can write it off, man. It would be amazing.
As a medical expense, I think so.
Yeah,
man.
But don't get in there and worry, right? Because then you'll do.
No, I like what you said. It's being. That's really nice. It's a separate space. It's like that's not allowed here. This is a place where. Yeah, I think that's a great concept. I really like that.
Completely safe. Focusing on the goodness and letting that change the neural pathways. And then when I do one step further. So if I have someone who's afraid to drive or afraid to shop, grocery shop, things like that, I say we're building classical conditioning here, which is what a lot of our problem is on a psychological level with some of this stuff is a classical condition like driving. You learn to associate two stimuluses that maybe don't go together, like having a panic attack on a bridge. I say you get a call that someone you love has been in a bad accident and you have a panic attack while you're driving over a bridge. So you're 50% more likely to have a panic attack a second time driving over that bridge.
You betcha.
Just because of the correlation there, and the limbic system says, it didn't know about a phone. We didn't have phones.
Well, the next time you go over the bridge, you go, oh God, last time I drove across here, I had a panic attack. And now you started that whole, And
even if you don't do that, the limbic system
it's still there. That. Yeah,
it remembers. That's why I say it's like this loyal dog, it remembers everything you don't remember. So it says something bad happened here. So I say you're 50% more likely to have a second panic attack. And if you have a second one, especially if you run from it, that's where running is the treat you give the dog for alerting you, right? It's like, good boy, thank you. What's it going to do now the next time? You're 85% more likely to have the third panic attack. And by the third panic attack, the hooks are in. Now the limbic's saying,
you established the pattern, and
we've got a connection there, So it's a classical conditioning kind of phenomenon at some level there. And I said, so now we're building new classical conditioning, right? So, I mean, you can do this with anything. If I light a match and show you a rose, light a match, show you a rose. Before you know it, I can light a match, you'll think of roses, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we start doing this. And I said, you know, we're creating this safe place. We're doing all this kind of therapy in this tub, all these fragrances, scents, everything. Now, when you get into the car and you're worried about driving, I said, bring that little lotion in there with you, right? Say it's lavender that you always put on, a little dab of lavender on the tip of your nose, and like, you know, a lotion, and then bring that into the car, because now you're starting to bring that sort of that classically conditioned state of relaxation and mindfulness into the car with you, and your senses are powerful, right? So it's, your mind might be going haywire, but the senses are going to start to override that. So it's to bring that little piece of chocolate, put that, if it's Enya or Sarah McLachlan, whatever this pretty music, classical music it was for me.
Smooth jazz in the background or something.
I just slipped up and told you what mine was. I was listening to like Enya. I love
the sound of that, actually. Yeah.
I love Enya. I listen to Enya like obsessively. And
some of that stuff will get you. Yeah, that's too good. Yeah. I was an old new age guy for a while too, just a whole style of music. I used to listen to that when I was chilling and stuff, and that was, it helped me. You know, I think it's just, and I think that what we're talking about today is so important, because there are a lot of things we can do to improve, but we also want to make sure everybody knows that doesn't mean we ever are diminishing what they're going through, you know, because like, and I think that's the difficult point, because I think a lot of, sometimes people say, oh, well, you're just saying if you just do this, you're gonna be fine. No, we're not saying that. We're saying there are things you can do to help to improve and reduce sometimes the severity of your symptoms. There are things you can try to do, but God, the last thing I think you or I are ever doing is downplaying how severe this can be.
No, not
for some
at all.
people. It's incredibly difficult. And I get that. I just want to make sure with all the people I work with, it's like, you know, this is, I mean, you've been there, I've been there, you know, some people are in worse than I went through, some people are less than I went through, but I get it. I've been there. I know exactly what, you know, not exactly, but I know what you're going through. And it's horrible. I mean, like you were saying earlier, you know, in the conversation, it's the worst experience probably you'll go through in your life. For some people, again, for some people, it's not a big deal at all, but for some people, but for those people, it's that bad. It's and people haven't believed you, and you've been isolated, and you've been alone, and you may have lost your relationship, you may have lost your job. There's so many consequences. I know it's horrible. All I think you and I are trying to do is, hey, we're here to try to help. Absolutely. And there are some things you can do that can improve your circumstances. You know, and we're not going to fix you. We're not going to cure you, but we can help you get it a little better. And I think that's, I love what you're talking about. I think you got some great, you know, some great advice. I really appreciate it. You know, and you come with that psychological background, which I love. You know, I don't quite have that. I have more lived experience background, and done through the podcast, just listening to people. And, you know, that's what it's great. We come at it from all these different angles. You know, I work with, you know, Dr. Christy Huff and Dr. Alexis Ritfo. And, you know, I used to work with Dr. Stephen Wright, addiction medicine doctor, who was one of the first ones. He came out and he did all these presentations through medical conferences. And he'd always would start with, and I love this, my name is Dr. Stephen Wright, and I'm a reformed prescriber.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was great. He was right up with me. He was addiction, you know, medicine doctor, MD, and he was right away saying, "Sorry for prescribing these. I didn't know. I didn't really know. I didn't understand." And that always just opened the door to talk to anybody. It was great. He's retired now, but he had so much advice and stuff like that. And, And one thing, and people are always, you know, damning the doctors, and I get it, because of what we've been through is justified. I'm not saying it's not, but there are a lot of really good doctors out there, and there's a lot of them that are really working to try to help us. And I work with them. I know, you know, it's like there's so many out there. So just because we've always faced the bad ones doesn't mean that the medical establishment, some of them get it and they're trying to change things, and we're doing that. We're changing things through laws. We're changing things through education. You know, we just got done with a 4-part CME series for medical education we created, and did that at Lunch and Learn special. I got videos coming out on it now. So we're trying to get that education out to the doctors to help them understand this stuff better.
That's great. No, that's great work. Yeah, I don't condemn psychiatry, you know.
No, I don't either. Yeah, exactly.
It has its place, but
I see a lot of people doing that, and I totally get why, and I totally get where they're coming from. You know, I'm not saying that's not valid, their arguments. I'm just saying I think for me, it's I decided I could either work against them or I can try to work with them and change their mind. And I decided to try to work with them and realize that some of them just were taught the wrong thing. You know, it wasn't really their fault. They were just taught, hey, guess what? The pharmaceutical reps came along and said, these are completely safe. Just prescribe them as you want to. There's no problem.
Right.
You know, and that was their education, was pharmaceutical conference, you know, and that's all they had on them. So is that really the doctor's fault? You know, it's one of those things you got to get into. And there's some doctors that they've been horrible. Yeah. But there are good ones out there. And I think we are starting to change things. The FDA 2020 FDA box warning that came out on benzodiazepines, on the long-term effects of them, was huge. And that's really opened the door, I think, to our message somewhat. So,
but we got to be careful with that too, because now what you're starting to see is what was unexpected, which was doctors now trying to safeguard, and they're rapidly ripping people off.
We saw that in Ireland about 5 years ago. Ireland, they really cut down on benzodiazepine prescribing because of these problems. And then they had the huge deprescribing problem because nobody could get benzos to taper. So that we cannot educate people on prescribing with also educating them on deprescribing. And that's the number one rule. You're right. Yeah, because that is a huge danger, that people can't get the drugs to taper slowly. And we need to make sure they have access to those drugs.
Or just the doctor trying to wash their hands quickly too.
Oh God, yeah. You know, sometimes it's just that. Too quickly, you betcha.
They go, oh, these are bad. Let me get you. And it's like, no, that's not the process. We need to educate them about that. And then what's the, you know, I love psychology, man. I think there's a lot of hope there, you know.
I do too.
And I think it's kind of sad that big pharma has tried to snuff us out. And I mean,
I know
the history.
I'm not a big fan. I think most people know that. But I mean,
history is dirty.
You know, but I'll get some people writing into me and saying, it's like, well, you know, it's got to get rid of the medication. It's like, well, wait a minute, hang on a second. You know, it's like, I would not be here today if it wasn't for medications.
Right.
You know, I cut my leg wide open when I was 5 years old. I needed antibiotics to live. I would not have survived. I needed anesthesia. These are all medications. So, you know, just be careful. And even benzos are really helpful. If somebody comes into the ER with severe agitation,
careful with that.
You need a benzodiazepine. I mean, you need something to help with that agitation. It's just they're overprescribed, in my opinion.
I'll go one step further, and this makes me this will be triggering almost for someone, but hear me out. I go, benzos are amazing. They're amazing. They're a great drug. Actually.
Yes, that's the problem.
But the caveat, it's like opiates, right? Oh, get rid of opiates. Yeah, we'll go have surgery or do something without
pain.
Opiates.
They're wonderful. They kill the pain. They're great. Yeah.
They're not meant to be taken every day, guys.
Exactly. Right? I totally agree.
I would probably still take benzos every now and then. Say I was flying and I needed, I had, you know,
I wish I still could do that. Yeah, I really do. I wish I could take a one-off benzo to help with occasional things,
right?
And do it carefully. But no, I can't now. I realize that. Yeah, not. I mean, I did have midazolam about three months ago for surgery, and it was a conscious decision. I had to decide whether or not to. But by taking the midazolam, the benzo, I knew I was reducing my anesthesia.
Right.
And I would have a better recovery. So it was a balance I was trying to decide. And also, I even did it on the podcast. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try it because I want to be the guinea pig. You know, let's do this. Let's do this, puppy. I did not notice any lingering effects from it after the surgery. I don't think I had a problem. Ashton says it's probably safe. It's such a short acting, but some people have said they've had some issues with it. And I don't deny that. It's one of those things, but for some medical procedures, it's still the best drug for what they're trying to do. And we have to keep that in mind when we look at these things, you know?
Yeah. Like, God, I wish I knew then what I know now, you know?
Oh my God, me too. Yeah. I never even started taking the drug in the first place if I knew. But yeah, I might have had a Xanax or two in my pocket for something, but I wasn't even having anxiety problems before I took my drug. So I didn't even know. And I didn't know they would create a, you know,
a
lingering anxiety effect. But
think about every now and then you travel, you can't sleep, and it's just, you're riled up.
I wish to hell. Yeah. I wish to hell I had a safe pill I could take that would take care of my anxiety when I wanted to.
Right.
I don't. Unfortunately. And so I actually have to do the work now. I have to do the work. There's no magic pill. I have to do the work. And that's what it comes down to, is like, we got to do the work, you know, and
But hey, there was life before Big Pharma, right?
There was.
You know what I mean?
We survived.
Our ancestors did it.
We thrived. Yep.
Yeah. So it can be done, you know. Well, man, I won't keep you too much longer here. This has been great.
It's been a pleasure.
Really enjoyed talking with you, man. I wish you had lived nearby. I think we would.
Where are you at in Florida?
I'm just outside
Northern,
Orlando.
Southern. Okay,
yeah, I'm right outside Orlando. About an hour.
I might
outside
be in
Orlando.
your neck of the woods in April.
Oh,
if
really?
I do, I'll let you know. Well, I'm doing that conference in Atlanta, and I'm not afraid of flying, but I prefer not to, so I'm going to drive. I actually do road trips, and I often stop by and visit listeners, and I'll do some chats with them. Sometimes I put them on the podcast, so I may be doing that, and if I do, I might pop down Florida way, and if I do, I'll let you know.
Let me know for sure. I'll buy you dinner or something.
Oh God,
it would be cool. We hang out.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
It'd be a lot of fun, man. Yeah, I've been down there several. I used to be a Disney park junkie, so I used to go to Orlando a lot. I've weaned myself off of that thing, but I used to be a park junkie. So yeah. They've done too much now to those parks with the price and everything.
It's crazy.
I can't stomach it anymore. It's like they've done everything to make them so expensive and so crowded. It's just not the park that it used to be,
Right.
They're not as much fun. So.
I think it's like $200 now or something like that.
It's like 130 or 40 to get in, but then they have this genie thing, and so now you pay per ride. Actually, if you don't want to be in a 2-hour line, and then they keep scraping, and then you got parking, and then you got hotel, and then you got. It is amazing what it costs now to go.
$10 bottles of water and stuff. It's like, come on, you guys. Nobody should have to spend $1,000 to take their family to Disneyland. That's just insane.
I totally agree. Yeah, I'm not pleased with what they've done. I know they're a corporation and they want to make tons of money, but
Yeah, I've got friends and actors that I work with down here that act in the little plays and things that they have, and they say we don't even have a discount. We can't get our family in there. I go, how dirty is that? You're an employee.
Yeah.
You're paying 150 or whatever it is to get in. Get out of here with that. That's crazy,
Yeah, I'm not, last thing I would do is disparage the corporation thing. I'm just saying though, I wish it was more affordable, and I wish it wasn't nearly as crowded. And those are probably the two key things that really have kind of driven me away. It's just not what it used to be. I used to go down there. It was affordable. My wife and I would go down, we'd take our niece and nephew down. We have 6 nieces and nephews, so we like to go down with them and take them down and do that kind of stuff. And we could afford it. Right. But now it's just not, it's changed, so.
Right. Oh, wow. Right. Well, hey, if you make it down here, man, let me know. And I would love to have another conversation with you. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy this, actually.
Well, I'd love to have you on the podcast, maybe a month or two or something, kind of space these out or something. What do you think? And then have you over there and do mine. I would love to have you on.
100%. Yeah.
I look forward to working with you more, David. I think this was a great conversation, a great start. And
absolutely.
It's been a pleasure meeting with you. Thank you.
And Godspeed to all your work and the conferences and everything you're doing. And one more time, tell them how they can find you and listen to your podcast.
Yeah, sure. The podcast is called the Benzo Free Podcast. It's on most of the primary podcast carriers and on YouTube. I have a channel on YouTube, Benzo Free. My primary website is Easing Anxiety. So the podcast is part of that now, and it's at easinganxiety.com.
Awesome. Great conversation. Hope everyone's still listening. I hope to have more of these. I would love.
I think you and I could have just kept talking for another 3 hours. So
we probably could. We should definitely do this again. Yeah,
I know, and we will. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks so much.
Awesome.